Thanks for your patience. Some technical difficulties. Basically, I don't get as much bandwidth at home as I used to. There's a lot more people on the internet these days, it seems, particularly in my home. So, yeah, hopefully this video is coming through loud and clear. Um, this is not going to be a super sophisticated live stream. I do have some visual aids, but they're going to be lo-fi, as in I'm going to hold things up in front of this camera just so I don't have to deal with any the complexities of screen sharing or any of that. So yeah, I really just wanted to create a stream that would serve you, the people out there, hopefully my friends, family, and fans, who I consider my community, in this time of global crisis. And I know that's what a lot of us are dealing with, is spending a lot more time at home than we usually do. And it occurs to me that throughout my working life, I've spent a whole lot of time at home and have, I believe, become something of an expert in the best practices for working from home, at least for me. So this isn't ideal for everyone. If you're, I don't know, an emergency room, no, bad example. I don't know, you're a lawyer and you've got like 6 kids and you're home for the first time, dealing with that insanity. Might be different than the experience I have, which is being home, doing creative stuff, trying to maximize my creative output for most of the day. But I have a lot of good ideas. I'm gonna throw a comment up in the chat. If you're in the chat, please say hello. I'd love to see you there, and also create some more interaction, and know who's out there. I don't want to get too thick into it for just a few more minutes to see if we can get some more people on the stream. Of course, this is a thing we can rewind and watch in the future. So if you have to dip out, also don't feel like you're going to miss out. Yeah, but yes, I've always been a freelancer. I've always been doing creative stuff. And I have always loved the freedom that comes with doing all my own sort of time management. And it was really difficult at first. There's nothing obvious, about how to best spend your time. What's up, Todd? Thanks for hanging out, saying hello. And I've not had the experience of being an employee too often. I do, group projects and I work on bigger things where I'm on a team and I'm a leader, or I'm helping leaders, so I know how that whole dynamic works. But the norm for me is being at home and doing a lot of sort of self-motivated work and trying to maximize my output, because as a freelancer, as a self-employed person, a lot of the time, the more I can output, the more I earn, or the more cool stuff I can do. Those are two of my primary concerns when it comes to work. And what's up, Pat? Good to see you. It's good to share that information, I think. So, and yeah, I've always been into health and well-being as well, especially for the last like 8 or 10 years, as I've become like a serious meditator, and um, just tried to adopt as many healthy practices as I can to be helpful and healthy. I should coin that term, write that down, healthy, portmanteau of healthy and happy individual. So that's what I am going to share with you, is all these tips and tricks and best practices for how you can spend a day at home, possibly largely with yourself, and be healthy and happy and productive, hopefully too. So yes, lots more people. Hey, what's up, Tim? Jax, welcome. Yes, going to be all kinds of knowledge and perspectives shared. And if you have questions, I will try to keep an eye on the chat. And also, if you have tips and tricks, also, because as I said earlier, like, it's such an individual thing, depending on what kind of home you have, depending on your lifestyle, depending on the kind of work you do. These things are all going to affect what kind of strategies work for you. So this is really just like me laying down all the strategies that I've had many, many years to develop and spend a lot of time working on too. But you're going to have your own strategies, and I'd love to hear them, and I'd love to have them shared in this forum as well. So as we go through stuff, please throw your ideas into the chat, because everybody's going to have their own perspectives, and I really would value having all that shared. Definitely want to make this a more discussion oriented, interactive kind of thing than just mulled over talking at camera for a while, and it's not going to be an hour long, by the way. I think I'm going to try to keep this to like 30 minutes because I really just don't want to lecture you for that long on these kind of things. But I'm really excited because I do all these workshops, and it's like, hey, Moldover, how did you build that crazy cool custom 3D printed innovative MIDI controller? Or how did you get Ableton Live to talk to those lasers and that fog machine for that show? And sometimes I'll be like, hey, and now I want to talk about how you can be a happy and productive artist for, many years to come. And people are like, oh, show us the MIDI controller again. So this is an opportunity to get into that stuff because it's especially pertinent at this time. So without further ado, what the heck are these tips and tricks I keep referring to? Basically, I think of it like building a balanced day. We could talk about building a balanced week after that, but um, I like to plan. I like to put some planning into my days. I've certainly spent many days and weeks doing unplanned days where it's like I'm gonna follow my intuition, my passion, and whatever I'm like inspired to do is gonna be the thing that I do next. Um, and I find that when the majority of my days are like that, I just don't get as much done. Or I'll get a lot of things done, but I'll reflect back on what I did, and it's like, oh man, like I still haven't done my taxes, and oh, I didn't follow up on that phone call for that gig that was going to be really good, and instead I spent the whole time like, writing songs that may or may not ever get finished. So finding balance within all your priorities, I think, is really key. So it's a good place to start is priorities. Like, what the heck are your priorities? You got to get organized. That is huge for maximizing all your human potential. And so I always have lists, and not too many lists and not too many systems. A lot of the ideas I'm going to throw at you are coming from the Getting Things Done book, which I recommend as like a guide, but it's kind of old school. Like they talk about, physical printed documents a lot and like sorting them. And it's more for like an office, I think, conventional kind of workplace, and less for like, I'm going to wake up in the morning and teach myself some 3D modeling skills, and then I'm going to like do some remixing for 2 hours. And, I don't know, just like kind of the alternate kinds of work that I do. Didn't seem to resonate as much with that book, but a lot of the concepts are really, really great. So one is just using lists and other containers to get things out of your mind and to avoid mind clutter. I'm going to use that phrase a few times. I don't know if I've coined that or not, but I think it's a good um, concept, mind clutter, for like stuff you don't really need to be thinking about. A lot of things, or a lot of how people explain their frustrations when they're trying to sit down and do work, or you know create things, is like, man, I just keep getting distracted. Like I'm in front of a computer to make music because it's electronic music, and Facebook is right there, and email is right there, and my mobile phone keeps buzzing, and I want to check on what's going on with the pandemic, and so there's all these things distracting us, and I would call that mind clutter. Oh, I gotta scroll this whole chat. um, Cool. Okay, everybody's saying hello. I'm catching up on the chat because I feel like it's not auto scrolling. And then I lost my train of thought because one pointed at attention. That's how I roll. No, I was talking about mind clutter. So yeah, you want to avoid those kind of distractions. A really There's a bunch of best practices. So one is to have these containers I was referring to, which mostly come in the form of lists, but it's not all lists. It could be a to-do list. It could be an item that goes in your calendar. It could be notes, just like it doesn't exist well in list form. I need to collect a bunch of notes. So you just need containers for all this information. And um, uh, sorry, I was just laughing at things in the chat. It's going to keep happening over and over again, I'm sure. Don't say funny things in the chat if you want me to stay focused. um, um, no, somebody's listening to television upstairs. That doesn't usually happen. How interesting. Yes, lists and containers. So I'm going to talk about my most important list, and this is the one that relates to building a balanced day most importantly, and this is a to-do list. So look, I made an example to-do list. It's because I didn't really want to show you my actual to-do list, because then you'd see all these crazy, cool, yet unreleased and often NDA protected projects. So this is an example to-do list, and this is such a ghetto way to show you information. But basically, what I want to show you is that it basically prioritizes things into three categories. I think three is a good number. This is basically like high priority, low, middle priority, and low priority. I use as much as possible just like really simple free apps. A lot of people are like, oh, I get into Asana, or which is super cool, by the way, if you need to organize bigger projects. But for me, like to have everything exists. For me, I'm like an Apple user, iPad, Apple Watch, iPhone. And this is a MacBook Pro in front of me. I'm living in the Apple walled garden, and so having all these things sync flawlessly and without thinking and without having to think about installing software if I get like a new device or update my OS or something. I like to use these simple built-in apps as much as possible so that there's just like minimal overhead. So anyways, this is actually Apple's, what's it called? The Reminders app? Yeah, it's called Reminders. And so it's technically for making lists of things that you want to remind yourself to do. I don't actually use its reminding features, but I just like that it's like basically a checklist, nothing more. And then you can add priorities. You'll see over, this is a really terrible way to do this. You'll see over here exclamation points, which is like priority, right? So one, two, or three exclamation points, or no exclamation points. That's all you can do with this simple app, and that's to explain the priority. And like I manually kind of put them in an order, which usually has the high priority things at the top. And the other important thing I want to point out here is this is a very getting things done kind of concept, which is you never have anything on your to-do list, which is like more than you can do in a sitting. So for me, that's about 45 minutes. But I think in getting things done, it's like nothing longer than like 15 minutes or something like that. And the reason to do this is like it's frustrating to have a task on your to-do list, like, new album, which represents, 1,000+ hours of work, and no way to break it down. And then you have to deal with the mind clutter of like, oh, where am I at in my album? Like, which song was I working on last? What point was that song at? Um, and you're just digging through mind clutter unnecessarily, when what you should do is break it down into these like actionable tasks. So that one I broke down into what? Complete songwriting, record demos, solicit feedback, select songs, recording, production, mixing. For a big project like producing an album by yourself, that's probably things that'll get broken down even more. And a more realistic one might be like this one for music video, where it's like color grading, final peer critique, export, upload, pre-announcements, promotion. So kind of the more granular you get with it, the better, as long as it doesn't take too much of time away from like actually doing the project. And the cool thing about that is when you do build your calendar, which I'll show you now. This is actually kind of cool. It's really easy to zoom around and stuff. Here's an example calendar of a day, and I cut off the beginning of the day, which is like breakfast and meditation, two things I like to do first thing in the morning. But there you see songwriting, and then you see like a specific task. And the idea with that is like, instead of looking at songwriting on your calendar and being like, oh, like administrative stuff, what do I do? You can't just jump into action and realize like, oh, finish lyrics from yesterday. It's like really specific, like specific actionable task, whatever it's called. Basically having something on your calendar that you can complete in a chunk of time is way better for your productivity and your sense of accomplishment. So that instead of wondering what to do, and when you get to the time of the period you've allotted for it, wondering like how well you did it, you'll just know, yeah, oh yeah, I worked on the lyrics, and they got somewhere. Maybe they got done, maybe they didn't get done, but you don't have to think about it when it comes to what to do next. So I basically build the day's calendar by looking at the things on my to-do list and directly like taking them off of here and putting them into here. And that's the first thing I do in the morning, or the last thing I do, the night before. Actually is better if you do it that way, kind of plan your next day, I think. So the to-do list is a container for everything that you want to do, and the calendar is the way you plan it and execute it throughout the day. And there's no rocket science here, but some people don't have this kind of an organizational system, or some people could like upgrade their organizational system. I don't know. But this is what I do, and it's kind of cool having it in the calendar app. I can't demonstrate it here, but you can just click and drag these little chunks. It looks a little funky because they're all like split up because I have little tiny ones for like 15-minute intervals and then bigger ones for 45-minute intervals. And so it's staggered those in two columns. But the way it usually displays is just like one column and it's very clear. Like, okay, I've filled up most of the day with stuff to do. Um, yeah. So one big point I like to mention here is a pro tip. If you have any questions, by the way, just shout out anytime. Um, that also like encourages me that there's people out there listening because it's really weird just sitting here and like talking to what I imagine is a crowd of people, but it's just my computer. And love to hear your questions too. If there are any, maybe you don't have questions. Pro tip I got from one of my mentors, Roger Lynn. I think he said it a little less poetically, but he basically says like, you know what, what makes you happy? It's figuring out what makes you happy and doing that a little bit every day. And that really stuck with me. He said it. He said it more poetically, actually. I apologize. Um, but that led to this mantra I have, which is I um, I do the thing that means the most to me, the things that I really love and I really care about. Usually, regardless of do they make money, regardless of like, oh, I really want to finish the album, and that's the thing that I should do, regardless of any shoulds or practical needs. There's usually something at the top of my passion list which really feels the best or leads to this sense of like I'm fulfilling my life's purpose. So lately, it's been working on this music video. It's a video I've been working on for like way too long, like 2 years, and I really want to get it done. And I'm actually really juiced up about where I am in the process. It's like mostly done editing and I'm learning how to do like color grading with these really interesting tools that I've never used before. And so it's like educational and it's creative in a way that I haven't messed with before and kind of fun and inspiring. So that's what I've been doing every morning, first thing in the morning. And I think it's crucial to do that. That might be like playing your musical instrument, that might be playing with your kids. I don't know. It could be anything that really makes you happy. So that's an individual thing and a really important thing. And the key, I think, to doing that first thing in the morning and doing it every morning is that you never look back on the day or pause for any moment and ask yourself like, oh, did I do what makes me happy today? Do I feel good about today? If you at least did it a little bit, even if it's like, you're super stressed because you got bills to pay and, you know, um, kids screaming at you, like, if you just do it for like 15 minutes, like get up that much earlier or whatever it takes, you're just a happier human being. And I believe that very strongly. So figure out what makes you happy, do that a bit every day, and really try to do it like early in the day. I'll say before that, like, and it's not on my calendar, like I wake up and I meditate first thing in the morning. I've discovered that for me, in the way my mind body works, meditation for 45 minutes to an hour, usually 45 minutes these days, just makes the whole day like that much smoother, makes me that much more productive. And I used to question, oh, I'm losing those 45 minutes, but really what I gain by how much smarter and more effectively I work and ability to like, stick with the discipline of like going through a scheduled day. Um, it's great. Super, super helpful. And then also, of course, eating breakfast. All right, we're getting some questions. So now's a good time to pause for questions. How much time do I put for my items in the calendar? Great question. I have played with that a lot. Like, how much time can I stay focused for? Um, some activities I feel like I can stay focused for a long time, but and do the thing for a long time. But what I find works best is to work in 45-minute intervals. That kind of works out with the hour nicely, which is convenient. But basically, working for 45 minutes and then doing some kind of self-care activity for 10 or 15 minutes, and doing that rhythm no matter what. And you might like get into like a creative flow, and things are just getting good with the color grading or the songwriting or whatever it is. But by forcing yourself to take that 15-minute break, often you come back like refreshed and you sit down in front of the same work again and you're like, oh, that thing that I was didn't know how to do, like I figured it out. I know what it is. You do so much important work in your subconscious. That's like why you got to sleep too. But these little 15-minute breaks. I don't know if they're called breaks is the right thing, but they really, I think, facilitate a lot of creativity. They just force you to reapproach whatever you're working on periodically, and they create time for change, which is really good, variety, which is really good, and the kind of tasks you're doing. So that's a great question. Thank you, Siash. Appreciate that. Do I incorporate the Notes app as well, or just reminders? That's a great question. I usually just use the Notes app for notes. I have a really old iPhone, so I haven't been able to update the features of the Notes app, and I know it does all kinds of much cooler, crazier stuff now, including good, yeah, checklist functionality and that kind of stuff. So I'm still using Notes in kind of an old school way, until actually no, it's my Mac OS that's actually the holding me back a little bit. I'm going to be upgrading the laptop soon, I hope. But yeah, the Notes app is really useful. The Reminders app you could totally just use the Notes app, but I like the Reminders app because it kind of like lives in its own little place, and it has that little priority dealy, which is cool. And one more question. This is a really wonderful idea. I'm definitely going to adopt this practice. It's not a question if it doesn't have a question mark at the end. I got to remember that. I'll work on that. Um, but yes, I'm glad that was helpful for you, Jackson. I'm gonna like that. I can interact in the chat too. Um, an important thing regarding how you choose what to put where in your calendar day. So that's where the priority list comes in really helpful. By separating that that organizational time either in the morning or in the evening, where you look at your to-do list and you prioritize it. That's really important because I think it's good to step back, look at the big picture, and say like, what's really important to me now? Do I need to earn more money? Well, let's bump things that are going to earn money up the list. Or oh, maybe like I really really want to get this done. It's really important to me for this reason or that reason. Let me bump that up the list. Oh, that thing, with that person, like they're out of town for a month. Like, I can deprioritize that. So, like reassessing those priorities periodically is a really good idea. Removing things from your to-do list, while it may be hard, is like super crucial. And I have a hard time with that, and I imagine lots of people do. But it's just like, you think of something and you're like, oh man, I should really, update my password system. It's insecure, and that's a problem, and I want to be secure, so like I should totally do that. And so you put that on your to-do list. But you might collect all these things, and over time, like that list gets too long. So just as you reprioritize things, you gotta like sometimes just remove things from that list, and it's kind of sad. But if you don't want to like delete them, you can do what I do, which is I have like the B to-do list, which I really like almost never look at. um, but those are like those stretch goal, like dream projects. That's where they wind up, where it's like, oh man, I really wanted to like do a bunch of remixes of my own tunes from that last record, and I never got around to it. But like I'm not really a remix artist, so it was okay to let go of that, I think. So yeah, reprioritizing your list, pruning your to-do list, and using that as a basis to build the stuff for the day. So as I said, I think the first thing you do every day should be something that really makes you happy, really fulfills you in some really meaningful way. The next things you should do are those high priority tasks, for whatever reason. Then later in the day, you can get to those medium and lower priority things. And that top priority tier, like I make sure I touch each of those projects every day. And I think that's really important, because if something is really high priority for you, that means it's either like, going to crush your soul if you're not working on it, or maybe it's going to crush your life in some practical way. Like, you need to do this thing to earn enough money to do that thing. And so you really need to touch it every day. And by making sure you have a time slot for all those high priority things each day, that to me provides me with a balance to that feeling of like, oh, I did that thing that makes me happy and I'm really passionate about. And I made that like, that's almost like super priority, but I don't even think of it that way. It's beyond priority. But by touching all those high priority things early in the day, you make sure you get them done, and then when the chaos enters, as it inevitably does on some days, you don't stress out like, oh man, it's already like 5 p.m. and I didn't work on the thing that I was supposed to work on for the project with the people. And yeah, so you get the important things done early. That's like common sense. So with regard to getting things done and the mind clutter I mentioned earlier, You probably know this, but like not a lot of people are willing to commit to the discipline it takes to do things like not check your email in the morning, not look at the news in the morning, not access social media in the morning. I often go as far as like just turning off my mobile phone or putting it in like a do not disturb mode so that like a text message or whatever silly notification from an app like cannot break my flow, cannot add to mind clutter, like all that stuff really, I think is much much better done later in the day. Getting up early helps. That's a good pro tip, Daniel. Thank you. Glad to see you. Yeah, I think getting up is a good, getting up early is a good thing too. I mean, I know some people are night owls and they're more productive and more creative in the evening. And again, this is a like, to each their own kind of situation. But I can tell you that like, you need sunlight. Like humans feed off that vitamin D, and to me, like being in sync with the sun and, as you say, getting up early, I feel really helps with my overall productivity for a day. So that's a thing. I never sacrifice sleep. Sleep is super crucial. It's like food, honestly. And if you sacrifice food or sleep or water, that's another one that's really important. You are just not going to be as happy. You're not going to be as productive. And even if you force yourself to spend, 10 hours in a day working on a thing, if it's not 10 hours that you're happy, if it's not 10 hours that you're well fed and well rested, like you're just not as happy. You're just not as productive. You um, can't be doing all that stuff. So without proper self care, basically. Um, so yeah, I highly recommend you institute some kind of practice where you don't mess with any of those distractions until later in the day. And for me, that's always like waves. Lately it's like no, I'm like fiending for the news because yeah, it's such a crazy time right now, and like there's so many ways that global, local, all the news are affecting all of us, and the people I live with. It's just a time of high tension, so I feel like I need to stay a little more on top of like when information is coming down. Um, but I was at a artist residency for a month in January in Canada, and I was blissfully able to like, totally ignore um, news and social media and stuff like that for practically the entire day until like 9 p.m. or I think I'd do some email late in the afternoon or whatever. But anyways, those are good tips for avoiding mind clutter. Is like really like try putting yourself on a digital diet or whatever, and pushing all that stuff later into the day because really like it's exciting. It's exciting to be distracted. That's we all know at this point like how social media works. Is it like pokes you with like, oh man, there's a post from my friend and their loved one is sick, or they're something really engaging that they post. Like it's all algorithmically designed to like trigger our emotions and get us interested. And the news is the same way. And really, you don't need that in the morning. You don't need that at all, to be honest. But yeah, it's there. So okay, that's the pro tip regarding mind clutter and what you intake. And I touched on it. I'll just say a few more words about pro tips about self care. These are tips I got a long time ago, and they really, really helped me. Um, and they were just like all this time I spent like trying to stay focused and work really hard and work, 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 work. And, I just wasn't happy and I wasn't enjoying the work and I couldn't figure out why. And it turns out a lot of the time I was just hungry or I was thirsty or I was tired. And literally like those three things, along with other things like, your emotional well-being and some sort of higher up the um, Maslow's hierarchy or whatever kind of needs. Like if you're not taking care of that stuff, don't bother. Don't bother like working on your album if you're not well fed. So to that end, like I usually have a bottle of water within reach, and here's one right here. Drink your water, stay hydrated. I always have snacks within reach. Your snack choice may vary, but like dried fruits, protein bars. I like trail mix kind of things, like dried nuts and dried fruit and nuts. I enjoy, but just having those so that like if I'm really focused on something and I really want to stay here and I can't take lunch at the time I was supposed to or whatever, like I can grab that protein bar and I can keep going with full blood sugar and full productivity. And speaking of sleep, like I've messed with my sleep all kinds of different ways, and I've learned a bunch of things. And my rules of thumb are less than 2 hours of sleep, I don't function. If I can't sleep for 2 hours, I'm kind of a zombie the next day. And it's just like, don't even bother. Like, go to sleep. Get those 2 hours minimum, unless like it's a life threatening situation or something, super, super crazy where the project needs to happen. 6 hours of sleep is the minimal for like normal functioning. Like between 6 and 4 hours of sleep, like I'm okay. I can get through the day, no problem. But like I'm just gonna do everything slower, and yeah, and it's a waste, like if I go through a day on 5 hours of sleep, I'd say I'm like half as productive as I am if I get 6 hours of sleep. Maybe that's a little dramatic, but you get the idea. So for me, it's like a 6 hour sleep minimum. And the other thing I've learned is like 8 hours sleep maximum. Like if I sleep 9 or 10 hours, it's kind of like sleeping less than six. It's like counterproductive. I get more tired, not helpful. So between 6 and 8 hours is like optimal for me. And sometimes I've used alarms. Sometimes I try to just trust my body clock. I really love alarm apps that either listen to the sound in the room, or like you put them on your bed and they detect when you move, and they'll only wake you up if you're already like kind of moving around because you're not in REM. Those are really cool. Sleep Cycle is one of those that I use. Let me check in on the chat. What did I eat for breakfast today? That's a great question. I had oatmeal with lots of fruit and nuts and delicious stuff mixed in, prepared by my lovely partner, who's really into oatmeal. Oatmeal was not my standard a few years back, but it's really good, healthy. I recommend it. B&H has a sale on MacBooks. Get out of town. Thank you, Cindy. I'm totally gonna check that out. I just opened that tab and then open that link in another tab. I hope it doesn't hurt my bandwidth. My bandwidth is whack. I hope you guys are all hearing me okay. Rich earlier said defaulting to double calendar reminders, T minus 30 minutes and T minus 5 minutes helps me keep track when the day isn't packed back to back. Yeah, I like that. You can. That's my favorite reason to use the calendar app. Honestly, is the reminder feature. Is it all it all syncs up with my phone, and then I just get an alert, and I just do it at the time of the event, unless it's like something like a call or a Skype thing, where I have to kind of be prepped. Or I use the travel time feature where you can say it's going to take me 30 minutes to get to the meeting at the place, and then it by default creates a reminder at that time. So I really like that. So I get a little reminder alert that kind of keeps me on this schedule, and I try to go through the day sticking with that. Let me just say a few more tips about what's in the calendar. So things I like to do for these 15-minute breaks are like a little bit of yoga, stretching, whatever you want to call it. Some quick strength exercises. I really love that. If you just do like a bunch of push-ups, a bunch of sit-ups, a bunch of squats or something, for like 10 or 15 minutes, like it just does amazing things for your mind, honestly. Like it gets all the blood flowing, and when I get back down to like sit in front of that video editor or whatever it is again, um, that's a little bit like computer and brainy, like because my body's like pumped again. I'm just that much more productive. Give yourself plenty of time for lunch. Make eating part of your schedule for sure. One of my favorite ones is to go outside. I go outside every day, and doing it for just a 15-minute break is usually not enough, but it's good. That's like a minimum, let's say, for me. And that can be a walk around the block, a short walk through the neighborhood. And that's just huge. That like affects your vision. You get to focus on things that are not like 2 to 10 feet in front of your face, which is really good for you. It gives you fresh air, it gives you sunshine. This is something we're all encouraged to do despite the COVID-19 crisis we're going through right now. And really, I live in a city in San Francisco, but I can walk to a park. I can see trees and grass, and just staying a little bit more connected to the natural world is really, really good. Really, really good for my emotional and I should say spiritual well-being. I'll go get a cup of tea. That's one thing on my list is like in the realm of food and water for a lot of people is caffeine, right? Or maybe other stimulants. I don't think cigarettes are as popular as they used to be, thank goodness. I was a smoker way back in the day. Don't recommend that. But I've always been a fan of caffeine, for better or worse. Used to be an enthusiastic coffee drinker. I switched over to tea some years ago, and I just enjoy it as a way to kind of a little bit tweak my alertness, let's say, based on like how much sleep I got usually. Um, and yeah, I mean your results may vary, but I've always been enthusiastic about having some kind of caffeinated beverage for me. But yeah, to each their own. Excuse me. It is nice to have some kind of drink. I like carrot juice too, but just something, I don't know, something to like reach for. Somehow it's like maybe it's oral fixation or something. Who knows? But moving on. What else is in the calendar? Yeah, go get tea. If you're into meditation or you're interested in it, I strongly recommend meditating at the beginning of the day and meditating at the end of your, let's say, work day. And that's super cool because it's just really good. I heard a psychologist give a really great talk um, on why that's good and how it kind of like follows your natural kind of anxiety and alertness patterns, and just keeps you equanimous, keeps you mellow throughout the whole day. So anyways, I guess to wind up my talk about the calendar and planning all that, it's high priority. It's those beyond priority. I love this thing in the morning, and it's my high priority things in the rest of the morning. Then it's those mid priority things in the afternoon, and then it gets to like, oh, I gotta check my email. I gotta call that person back. Let me do that low priority kind of thing. Um, I'll often try to do like a workout in the middle of the day. This was something somebody asked in the chat. Oh, I should check that. The event page had some people asking questions in there. So I can open that in another tab. But one of the questions I believe was about, yeah, what do you do in the middle of the day when your energy is low? Often, like when your body's digesting lunch, I don't know the medicine behind it, but you go into that other parasympathetic nervous system. I don't know. Your body's digesting food. It's not really excited to do a whole lot, and that's why we have siestas in some cultures. And I do the anti-siesta when I can, which is I go ride the stationary bike in the living room up there, or do some more serious yoga, or like lift some weights or something. And sometimes it's hard to motivate myself to do that, but midday around 2, 3 o'clock is when I found myself to be the least productive, like sitting in front of a computer or at a workbench with a bunch of tools trying to make something. And exercise is so key. That's just above, I believe, the sleep and the eating and the hydration. You got to get exercise periodically for sure, particularly stuff that gets your heart rate up. I love that. That's, I think, is so good for your cardiovascular system, your blood flow. All those things are super good. So I try to do that in the afternoon. And then also, like, I love to schedule the end of the day. So in this calendar example here, which I can share with you guys too, I'll post this after I'm done with the stream. At the end of the day, like, I'll schedule that meditation. I'll schedule like quit, go get dinner, be done. Because otherwise, like, your work will extend for too far. And to be honest, like, you can only be creatively productive for so many hours in a day, and you can only really enjoy your work. I don't know, even if it's the coolest thing you've ever done, I think you still gotta like stop and like connect with your friends or family, or absorb some new information by checking out some art or some culture, or reading that news that you didn't want to read earlier, so you feel like a responsible citizen or whatever. You gotta put that in the plan, I think, because there needs to be relaxation, and this gets to the bigger picture balance of balancing these crazy focused work days. I don't know if I mean some people probably get more granular and more intense with how they're organizing their days, but yeah, for me, this is like one kind of organization, and this creates a balance for a day, and this is great. But this kind of intensity only works, I'd say, for up to like 9 hours, something around there, and then it's ineffective, and I gotta like relax, and I gotta chill out, and I gotta turn attention towards other things, and that might be like cooking. You can still do, I don't want to say useful things, but you can still do stuff for sure. You don't have to like plop down in front of a a movie or whatever, but sometimes that's the thing to do. Depends a lot on what you got to do too. So like I'll say like one of the things about my lifestyle that's probably unique is like I've been able to kind of engineer this stuff highly, because I've been working for myself like my entire life. I've worked into a position where like I get to pick and choose a lot of the projects I do, and they're very much based on the art, the music that I create. So I'm really fortunate in that way, and I know a lot of my friends have a different model where it's like, oh, I do this thing, earns a bunch of money, work for the man, for a big chunk of my day, and then like I get this other chunk of my day where like I can do whatever I want. It doesn't need to earn money. I don't need to promote myself. I don't, I just get to do what I love to do. Um, and so there's plenty of other models, but anyways, I'm just kind of outlining mine. So that was a disclaimer in there. But zooming out for a minute, you have to balance this kind of day with another kind of day. So I'll just say that like at least one day a week. Sometimes it's a Saturday. Sometimes it's kind of like a sixth work day, but it's not really a work day. And sometimes it's like for me, it was yesterday. Like yesterday, I was just like, I don't want that structure. I'm throwing the structure out the window. The balance of the structured day versus the unstructured day is really important. And sometimes, like, you know, in general, it's really practically good to like touch all those projects and like advance all those projects and do the high priority stuff first. And then some days it's like that just doesn't feel great. Like I'm an emotional being. I gotta take care of like, how I feel. And today I feel like I really need to move that video thing ahead. So yesterday it was like I got to like all these moments in the day where I was like, maybe I should work on that thing that has a deadline and a paycheck attached to it. And I was like, no, I'm working on the video. And I let myself do that for a day. And that was really important. And I'll frequently do that at least one day a week. And as I said, often that's like a Saturday or something. And the other key thing is like take days off. Like just like sleeping and eating and like doing that thing you love. Like I believe you need like an entire day at least out of every 7. Ideally, it should probably be 2, but I'm a little bit like a workaholic. That's what my friend Julie, DJ Shaky, coined. She said, "You're not a workaholic, Moldover. You're a workaholic." Uh, I think she said that because I love most of what I do, which is great. But despite that, like, there's got to be one day a week where like, and it's really about disconnecting from the things you don't want to do. And it's really about not having a plan, not having a schedule, and not feeling like you're doing anything you should do, but only things you want to do. And sometimes that's like going out in nature. Sometimes it's spending time with loved ones. You can do all these things together. And sometimes it's working on a project. Sometimes it's like, man, I haven't played guitar in a while. I'm doing live streams and, you know, designing controllers for artists. And it's like, I remember playing guitar more and that was fun. I just want to do that. And having a day off, a true day to like disconnect and let go of all that stuff is just like super super important. Um, yeah, so I got other little tips and tidbits and tricks in here, but I don't think I'm gonna say too much more. Um, I'm just gonna say that there's a lot of good reasons for all these things, most of which I've had time to give you, and yeah, I've filled up a lot more time than I thought I would. Um, I will just the other 2 notes I had in here were measuring progress and the like breaking your big to do things up into little lists and like being able to like delete things from those little sub lists. That is one great way to measure your progress. And another way is like to reflect at the end of the day. And there's some great quote from Ben Franklin. Actually, I should look that up and like put that into this if I ever make this like a formal lecture. But he said like I think it was his outline of like ideal day or whatever, and at the end of it, it was like you have to stop and reflect and appreciate the good you did during that day, and I think that's super important because you need some like feeling like you're on track and doing what's best for you and ideally best for those around you, helping the community, helping the society, somehow serving. You got to feel like that. Otherwise, why are you doing it? So that reflection is important. And the other tip in here is just really not well organized. Is keep your email to a minimum, only 1 page. Yeah, I'll just say that. So about the to-do lists, like the to-do list, this is really way smaller than my actual to-do list, but we talked about pruning it, and really it should be no longer than like 1 page. Otherwise, it's like some of those things you don't get to work on except for maybe your 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 spontaneous day. And when you have things on your to-do list for too long that you don't do, you start to feel down on yourself. So keeping it short and pruning is important. Keeping your inbox close to empty, if you believe it. Like you can do that. Get into like the getting things done thing, and they have great systems for like, you know, you had an email in your inbox that requires you to do like, a whole bunch of things. Like you have to look this thing up and write a long email and an explanation. The concept is break that up into things, like put it in the calendar, say like this is when you're going to work on that email. There's good systems in there, so I don't want to say too much more about that. Kind of breaking the vibe. Let me check back in with the chat here. Rich says iOS clock bedtime feature, which can extend do not disturb past when you wake up in the morning. Couple it with an actual wake up alarm. Cool, that's a good tip. Chuck's like digital diet. Yeah, digital detox, digital diet. Brad's talking about a tour where we drove nonstop from Denver to Seattle through the night without sleep, then crushed the gig the next day. Yeah, all right, so that's an exception. I'll say like the great thing about doing a tour is you get to perform and perform and perform. I mean, not every night, but a bunch, and then you get to like where you're really good at it instead of having to wait, a few weeks or sometimes months between doing the thing. You just get to, as you say, crush it. So I'm going to say that's an exception because playing that gig was probably not super creative. It was probably just super fun and super expressive of all the work we've been doing in the weeks and months leading up to that. And yeah, that's a good example. I think we did sleep in the car, right? Like I always give myself that's a good pro tip is like if you're dealing with sleep deprivation or you didn't get enough sleep the night before, the 20-minute nap. I love the 20-minute nap, and I've talked to a bunch of other people about this, and the key is like you don't want your body to start going into those deeper phases of sleep, and you don't want it to be so short, excuse me, you don't want the nap to be so short that like it doesn't feel to your mind body system like you've entered sleep. So the 20-minute threshold I've found is great because it's sort of like you come to this like relaxed state and you may still be having thoughts and stuff, but whatever, that's kind of just like dreams. But for 20 minutes it's enough for like everything to kind of slow down and relax. And and when you wake up for that after that period of time, I find it's like a good balance of like it's kind of tricked my body into feeling like it's been rested, and I get kind of a jolt of energy again. And I haven't gone into those deeper phases of sleep where like actually it creates this sort of cloudiness you get if you wake up during REM or other phases. Okay, Brad's just poking. Sleep is good. Okay, cool. I should probably read all the comments before I react. Vision shift from screen to sky is a great idea. Thank you, Todd. That reminds me also of like shifting your tasks. I didn't mention that, but I do a bunch of stuff with computers, like so much of my work is now in front of a computer in one way or another, and I think it's probably true for many of us. That's part of the reason I'm still passionate about designing hardware instruments is because to make this stuff, I have to go out in the workshop and at some point, cut up some aluminum and solder together some circuits, and balancing that kind of work with my hands is really good to balance all the work kind of with my eyes and my mind. To use my hands and my body is really good, and that's part of why I think playing musical instruments is good. Like tactile instruments, even in this world of digital instruments. What's going on? Pat's coffee drinker. Jordan, you missed the first part. That's too bad. It's okay. You can rewind. Yeah. Well, what do you guys have? What tips do you guys have? I want to see more tips in here from y'all and your opinions on this particular system of organization. Troy, appreciate what you accomplish each day. That is a good tip. I have questions for you about the blip blocks, by the way. I should reach out to you, but I already made a note about that. Insight timer for prioritizing meditation. Daniel, you turned me on to Insight timer. I've used it so many times. It counts how many times you've used it, and it recently surpassed, I don't know, like some thousands of hours of meditation with that app. So thanks for that tip. It's cool. You can make, periodic bells, or I think it's got all kinds of sound features. I don't use a tiny fraction of the features it has, but I just like the being able to set bells to do different moments in my meditation practice. Leonardo da Vinci, yeah, it could have been him. Sleep at their desk with pen in their hands, and when they'd start to fall asleep, enough the pen would fall and wake them up. Brilliant. 20-minute and 90-minute naps are most efficient for being less hungover. Yeah, I totally believe that. 90 minutes feels like the complete REM cycle, and I think 20 minutes works in the way I just described. So thank you for the validation, Jordan. Okay, cool. Well, I've been talking to y'all for 49 minutes and 56 seconds now. So I think it's a good time to wrap it up. I do want to say thank you for tuning in. I'd love any feedback you have. I think the chat, or at least this comment thread, stays live. So if you have any feedback, like was this helpful, was it not helpful, do you want to hear me talk about MIDI controllers and you don't want to hear me talk about what I had for breakfast and why I love meditation, please let me know. The aim, again, was really just to, I don't know, to kind of like serve the community in hopefully a somewhat creative way by sharing what I've done a lot, which is working at home. And I do want to plug an event I just created because in this wacky time, we have got to adapt, be creative, spending a lot more time lately with my household here and with this machine here and just looking for my events. Oh goodness, where did it go? Facebook recently updated their interface, and I don't know if you tried it yet. Anybody try the new Facebook? What do you think? Whoop. Oh, there it is. Manage. Come back. I'm just putting together like an online soldering workshop. Kind of a wacky idea, but I have 10 and only 10 DIY light theremin kits, and pasting the link in the chat right now. So I don't know, you're mostly like my friends, my good homies here. I don't know if you feel like learning to solder while you're holed up. Maybe you're not even holed up. Maybe you live in one of those places where you're not staying home, but I think you should stay home because it's good for not getting people sick and overwhelming the healthcare system. And even if you think you're not gonna suffer too much or die from this disease, if you go out, you're helping spread it to people that will, and that's not cool. So yeah, one thing you could do is build a light theremin with me in a virtual live stream. Not virtual, it's a real live stream like this one where I'll teach you how to solder, and you can make one of these cool gizmos, which I usually have right next to me. Oh, I have one of these next to me too, which could be fun. This is not the right one, but this is a light theremin. It's a very simple analog synthesizer that's super quiet, this version. And it is super fun. So anyways, I'll be posting in that event how to order a kit and order a soldering iron if you don't have one. And it's a fun, crafty thing. You could compare it to like knitting or something like that. It's just kind of a fun thing you can do. There's all these kits you can order too from all kinds of interesting people that like build your own electronic things, make your own robot or your own light show. Lots of fun stuff. And what else am I going to plug? I don't think I'm going to plug much else. I really just love more feedback because I'm trying to figure out how to roll with the punches in this situation and create opportunity for myself and the people in my community. So yeah, let me know what you think, and tell your friends about my soldering workshop, and also of course, just all the stuff I do. You want to buy a mini masher? You want me to perform at your online thing? You want me to do an online workshop with your online workshop? We'll make something happen. So stay in touch with your peeps, and thank you for tuning into this live stream. People are awesome. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. I hope you're well. Stay healthy. Stay happy. Peace.